Okay, this little clip is all about understanding the links between the two accounts of the balance of payments. So we start with the left-hand side, the current account deficit, which is an indication that we've spent more than we've earned. So, for example, if imports are greater than exports or income paid overseas is greater than income earned from overseas, we've spent more than we've earned. We move then to the capital and financial account of the balance of payments. This simply means that, well, it indicates that the amount of funds needed to finance the overspending. So if we've spent more than we've earned and there's an increase in that, then it means that there's an increase in the amount of investment funds that we need to fund that. And so those investment funds can come from foreign debt, so for example by borrowing from overseas, or they can come through foreign equity, for example selling shares to companies overseas. Okay, so let's take a really simple example. Betty from Betland, a one business economy, spends $2 million on imports and receives $1 million for her exports. So she's spending $1 million more on imports than she's receiving for exports. So it increases the current account deficit by $1 million. So $1 million extra is being paid overseas than is coming in. So let's just say that Betty borrows that $1 million from a bank overseas, let's say a place called Westland, to pay for those excess imports. So this is recorded as an inflow in the capital and financial account. So the amount that she actually borrows, which is known as the principal of the loan, comes in through the capital and financial account. So the increase of $1 million in the CAD is paid for and recorded as an increase in the CAFIS of $1 million. So how would this look on a simple balance of payments table? Okay, so here's our simple balance of payments table. Exports of $10 million comes in, imports of $11 million payment goes out, so we've got a deficit of $1 million that is paid for by borrowing that money from overseas. So if B stands for Betland, $1 million has left the economy through import spending, and the $1 million has to be paid for to come back into the economy through the form of borrowing, also known as foreign investment. And so the capital and financial account surplus means that $1 million of foreign investment has come into the economy to pay for the $1 million of extra import spending that left the economy. Okay, so we've seen therefore that so far our increase in the CAD caused by imports being greater than exports has led to an increase in the CAFAS, the capital and financial account surplus, the financial component of it, which has paid for the increase in imports. But wait, there's more. We want to know, okay, what happens next? So, we see, since Betty has borrowed $1 million, she now actually owes interest to the bank in Westland that she borrowed the money from. So let's assume that she pays, say, 10% interest, $100,000 in interest. That's an income flow. So this will be recorded as an outflow of income in the current account. It will increase the current account deficit by $100,000. How would this look in our balance of payments table? We'll find out in a second, but hopefully you're thinking, that's going to increase the current account deficit by $100,000. We also have to realise, however, that this extra money needs to be paid for. That $100,000 of income outflow needs to be paid for. So we're going to assume that Betty is going to borrow that money. and that's going to be recorded as an inflow in the capital and financial account. Let's have a look. Alrighty, look carefully then. Exports 10 million, yep. Imports 11 million, yep. We've borrowed that $1 million, remember, from Vestland, and we owe the $100,000 back to Vestland. So that's an income repayment, an interest repayment, debt servicing of $100,000. So in fact, if we look over at the CAFA, we'll just rub that out. Now the foreign investment coming in to Betland is the original $1 million loaned, but then the next $100,000 that was borrowed in order to repay that interest repayment. So you've now got a current account deficit of $1,100,000, and you've also got a capital account and financial account surplus of $1,100,000. So again, that increase in the current account deficit, overspending, has been financed by an increase in investment funds coming into the economy recorded on the capital and financial account, which increases the CAFIS. So let's recap then. If you have a current account deficit, you've got imports greater than exports, and perhaps income flowing out of the economy being greater than income flowing into the economy. That's then financed by investment that comes in through the capital and financial account surplus. So, for example, if there's an increase in imports, it means more is flowing out of the economy to pay for imports and is coming in for exports. That needs to be financed. So that's financed by increased foreign investment coming into the economy. So that increased foreign investment flows into the economy, and then that's going to require greater interest repayments, for example, overseas. So that's going to increase the amount of income floating out of the economy. That's going to then increase the current account deficit further. That means more money is going to need to come in to finance that overspending through the capital and financial account surplus. And so you can have this never-ending spiral, if you like, of increasing current account deficit contributing to capital and financial account surplus, or indeed, in order to reduce either side of the balance, if you have, say, if you have a rise in exports, that means that you'll actually have a decrease in the current account deficit. That means you have less need for investment funds to flow into the economy from overseas, and so that can then reduce the capital financial account surplus, leading to a reduction in the current account deficit, and so it goes on. So if we want to think, okay, how would we explain this in a short answer or as part of an essay, then here are some points to help you to be able to do just that. So the link between balance of payment categories, starting with an increase in the CAD. First step, an increase in the CAD will require an increase in foreign debt and or equity to pay for the overspending, which is recorded in the capital and financial account surplus. An increase in foreign debt requires debt servicing, that is, interest repayments overseas. That's recorded in the current account deficit. This therefore increases the CAD further. Again, the increase in the CAD needs to be financed, leading to a further inflow of funds from overseas, for example, by more borrowing. If the increase in the CAD is financed by an increase in foreign equity, for example, a company selling shares to raise funds, then this will still mean that income flows back overseas, because when the company distributes its profits, dividends will be sent to the foreign shareholders. This is known as profit repatriation and is recorded as an outflow of income in the current account, and so will add to the CAD. Thus, any increase in the CAD is offset by a corresponding increase in the CAFIS. If there's a reduction in the CAD, for example, if exports exceed imports, this means that less funds are needed from overseas, and indeed it can mean that Australians are able to pay back more debt, more principal on a loan, thus reducing the size of the CAFIS. We can also look at our links between the two sides of the balance of payments starting with the CAFA, starting with the capital and financial account. So here goes this style of explanation. A lack of national savings in Australia means many businesses will borrow money from overseas or raise equity finance by selling shares to foreigners. If an Australian business borrows money from a foreign bank to finance a new project, for example, funds flow into the country, which will be recorded as an inflow in the capital and financial account. The Australian business will then need to pay interest on the foreign debt, known as debt servicing. This interest will be recorded as an outflow of income on the current account and will increase the current account deficit. This increase in the CAD will then need to be financed through a flow of investment funds coming back into the country, either through foreign debt or foreign equity, thus adding to the capital and financial account surplus. So, an increase in the capital and financial account surplus will lead to an increase in the CAD, which will contribute to a further increase in the CAFIS, and so on. Conversely, if an Australian business repaid the principal on a foreign loan, investment funds would flow out of the economy and actually reduce the CAFIS, causing a decrease in debt servicing, and so that would reduce the CAD. So there you have it, simple as that. Increase CAD leads to increase CAFIS, and so that cycle would continue, or indeed a decrease in the CAD would help to reduce the CAFIS, and that cycle of reduction would also continue. As simple as that.